Hello, good evening, and welcome to Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you to go through all the action this week in Super League basketball.
Yeah, what we got?
Dave, I've been covering this sport for 30 odd years. I only ask one thing. One
Yeah,
thing I ask is, can the 4 p.m. game on a Sunday just be a blowout and be over at
yeah.
half time? Can we not have overtime on the 4 p.m. game on a Sunday? It makes my life a bloody nightmare.
And well, I think you've got a couple of other asks. I mean, you're not very keen on shirt colours being inappropriately.
Well, there is
Like,
that. Yeah,
let's not make yourself into
but
something.
that's broader. That's 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women, Dave. I'm just
Yeah,
thinking about me, just me, not having to sit and watch an entire 4 o'clock game at
and
9:30, 10 o'clock at night, just because it went
well,
to overtime.
we
Uh,
paid.
that's all I ask. Let's go back to Wednesday. And London Lions were playing, unsurprisingly, as they're playing in every game at the minute. London Lions 87, Sheffield Sharks 67. No Solowadi, Sandy, and Scott. Hawkins, Adamu, Williams. No, yeah, I've got Hawkins in twice, so he must have
Yeah,
been really good. He was in twice. Lee didn't play for the Sharks. Not a lot of points early on in this one, so not a lot in it until Adamu and Dean Williams hit threes to give London an 8 point lead at 20-12.
yeah. This was not an overly memorable game, that
Mm.
I'm
Mm-mm.
afraid, and the fact that it was Wednesday and there's
Yeah,
been
yeah.
multiple different games in the meantime doesn't really help it make its case for a large section of
No,
S&P analysis, does it?
no.
General concepts were kind of, I've seen this story before,
Mm.
both in relation to London kind of dragging teams down and
Mm.
shutting them down with their defense, and both in relation to Sheffield, who seem to have had a number of games on the road whereby you think they're playing all right, and then you look at the score and they're down about 14.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and there's no kind of they don't appear to be able to put a run together or get enough stops to change the tenor of the game. Obviously Lee being out and they've replaced him now, so
Mm.
obviously that's a season ender, which is a problem for them, I think.
I don't
Uh,
think they've confirmed that, but we're sort of
well,
reading
they've
the
put a
tea.
replacement in, haven't they?
There's somebody else has signed, so it looks
Yeah,
like
that's
that. Yeah,
saying.
yeah,
So
yeah,
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 that's my inference. Okay,
yeah,
fair.
yeah,
I've been born out of 30 years of this nonsense. Yeah.
yeah.
So I think Mike Tuck might have said that on the
Oh,
on
did he? Oh, I
might I
missed that.
might be wrong about that. So don't hold me either way. But I'd be surprised if he played another game,
Yeah.
given that you'd have to re-register, and I think the registration deadline is tomorrow.
Oh,
Um,
is there a registration
I
deadline?
thought there was. I thought it was end of
Somebody,
March.
somebody, I meant to look it up, but somebody about 3 weeks ago told me that it wasn't in, there wasn't one in the
Right?
rules anymore, and I needed to look at that, and I thought, oh, I will check that, and I didn't check it. So
Oh well, maybe there isn't. I mean, that
yeah,
would be great. Let's bring in a whole new team for the final. I mean, I'm not sure I'm
yeah,
a big fan of that
yeah,
either.
yeah,
But the rules are kind of a bit extraneous to the current operation of the league,
yeah,
aren't they?
yeah,
So
yeah.
why make things more complicated by bounding teams in? Um, I mean, it could be. I mean, that would be a great one. That would be also right for you could say you could wait until the Washington Wizards were out the play out finished the NBA season on April the
Yeah.
10th and signed their own team.
Although they're not doing very well.
No, they're at the playoffs now, but I mean, you could literally you could sign a bunch of J League guys for the last 3 weeks of the season. Man, it's rife for the corruption. It'd be brilliant. But there we go. It was always far too early, so I don't have
Yeah.
a problem with teams signing players now. Anyway, um, so yeah, other than that, the game was just a bit meh.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
Ali Hodgic and Glasgow tied it at 26. London then scored 11 of the next 12 points to lead 37-27. And to be honest, the rest of the game was basically double figures. That was basically the last run
and
of the
because
game.
London played two games, I have to say I'm kind of forgetting which game was
Yeah,
which.
they sort of merge
Um,
into each other.
They do, and I mean, certainly one of those games I thought Aaron Wright was excellent. I can't remember which one.
I think
Um,
it's the next one rather than this
Excellent.
one. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but they just, the depth that they have is unparalleled in the league, and probably unparalleled in league history. If we're being blunt, nobody's ever had 16 men on the rotation
Mm.
on the roster that I can ever remember. If you can
No,
tell,
no.
not even London in previous iterations,
Yeah,
not even Guildford. It's simply because it's just so bloody hard
yeah.
to keep everybody happy. So. Um, then the rules were
Previous rules wouldn't have allowed you to rotate like that as well.
previous rules wouldn't allow you to have six imports rotated to four. Obviously, that's only two. It's still got, basically 10 British players who are
Mm,
reasonable, reasonable to very good to excellent level,
mm, mm,
and to high level on that roster. So that what I will say is, the coach I think is doing a pretty good job in establishing precisely how they have to play, and having everybody buy into that. The corollary to that is that it's always a little bit easier for having people buying in for not playing if they feel like get them paid the market rate.
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's why you don't have problems with people on the end of the bench in the NBA because they know that if they cause problems, they're going to find somebody else to sit on the end of the bench,
yeah, yeah,
paid $1 million.
yeah.
But all that, they have fostered a sense of camaraderie and unity, which is not necessarily easy when you've got the amount of people that they've got
Yeah, yeah,
part of the
yeah.
organization. And I think that comes because you've commented on it, I think, on some of the games, or maybe somebody else has, and maybe in the final. They are ultimately a selfless team. It's rare that anyone goes for 20.
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and when someone gets subbed out after 5 months after
It's
they
a
made a
stat
couple of shots,
I've been meaning to look up because I'm
yeah,
sure if I went back through as live stats era, I can't imagine there's a team that's won as many games as they have won with this lower scoring top scorer average per
yeah.
game sort of thing.
And you see it, and there's never a look when, if someone gets pulled off, is subbed off after 4 minutes. There's
Mm,
never a kind of a side eye to the bench or anything like that.
mm,
So they all, however good they are, they all take their role. So that's a skill in itself, and that's a group in itself, which is good. Sheffield just, yeah, I mean, they've been through a few iterations now,
mm.
and I think you'd probably say they've never quite found the best version of themselves.
No, no,
And I mean, we'll talk
not for
about that a
long.
bit more on Sunday, not for long, yeah.
Brown 17, Reynolds 14.8 assists, 6 rebounds, Phillips 12, Philip 12, Williams 11, Chapman 14, Ali Hodgic 11. So we'll park that one and we'll move on to London winning at home by 20, Dave. London Lions 77, Bristol Flyers 57, so 10 points difference in each way. Solowadi, Scott in, Brown and Sandy out. Joe Anderson was out for Bristol, so a first start for Jonathan Brown. I thought Wednesday had a slow start. This one was 0-0 after 2 minutes, was 4-1 after 3 minutes. London eventually made some shots and led 16-6 after 7.5 minutes.
Yeah, this weekend was Exhibit A in the Joe Anderson campaign for league MVP.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to be fair, I think London were a little bit out of gas. Not physically, but I think mentally. They look at they played the game on playing Saturday, Wednesday, sorry, Sunday, Wednesday, and then seeing Bristol on the Friday without
And remember, they played the Thursday as well.
played the Thursday before. So I thought they were a little bit outside of Aaron Rye. I thought really just stepped up and kind of took over the game at various points in this game. They were waiting for somebody to do that. Bristol, it's just hard. Creating offense against London is hard, right?
Mm,
It is not easy, and you have to have points where you can gain an advantage. Points of advantage. You're not going to have an advantage on size, really, because London can match up with Brody, and they only play so many minutes for Brody on the court anyway. So you have to have some form of advantage off the dribble, and that's tough because Jonathan Brown has been an excellent athletic kind of backup point guard this year. He's made plays when he's come in. It's a totally different kettle of fish to having to run the team against London
mm,
and expect to jump to that next level when there's a reason that in games that Bristol played well, Joe Anderson's been playing 36 minutes
mm,
because he's the one guy who's very difficult to replace. So Bristol, it was just a question of where you're going to get your shots from. You can't really get your cheap Cameron Holden post ups because Cameron Holden's only being guarded by a guard, but Amina Adamu's 6'5" as well.
mm,
Or the wings are they're bigger at London, and then you've got to kind of rely on your shot making, and they haven't really. Look, Bristol have a nice system, particularly works well with Anderson running it.
mm,
They don't really have much in the way of individual shot makers.
mm,
Yoakum a little bit, but he generally plays off the catch as opposed to off the dribble. And then Zach Anderson plays off the catch. Um, Cam Christen plays off the catch, really. And what I mean by playing off the catch is when somebody's penetrated and kicked the ball and you've got kind of half a step or you've got an opportunity to a bit of space to let a shot go off. if you don't create that advantage in the first place, it's very difficult. And I don't think they created much in the way of advantages the whole game offensively, where London had to put two on the ball, or whether they were, or when they were, had an advantage in the screen and roll, and they could kind of get to the middle of the defense, and that just made offense very, very hard for them.
Mm.
And that's the thing about London, that they are a team which does not have to play well offensively to win.
No, no.
And I mean they have it's almost like a 10 to 15 point kind of comfort zone, if that makes any sense, whereby even if they shoot the ball really well, they're going to blow a team out,
Yeah,
like they
yeah,
did with Newcastle last week.
yeah,
Or,
yeah.
they're going to be.
It's like in
If
the cup
they don't
final.
shoot if they don't
Yeah,
shoot the ball well, then they're still going to be.
they're still going to reel you in. The problem in the cup final is Manchester didn't get 18, 20 points ahead, which
Yeah,
London shooting said they should be.
yeah,
And they got 8 points ahead, and
yeah.
that's not enough.
No.
And to be fair, I mean, we talk about, they do have dry spells at times, London. They led by 14 in the second quarter, but in the third quarter, they didn't really score, and Bristol slowly reeled them in, and the scores were tied at 47 just before the end of the third
Yeah,
quarter.
and he just almost felt like London were a little bit soporific in the way
Mm,
they were. As I say, I thought they looked kind of spent a little bit in this
mm,
game. It was like this game wasn't quite one that they needed. But yeah, I do remember Rye made some plays, and Rye had the ball in his hands,
mm,
and the other advantage, obviously, the other way you can score in is get offensive rebounds, but it's very
mm,
difficult to get offensive rebounds against London as well, because even their third string centre is Dean Williams, and he's 6'9" with long
mm.
arms.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and ultimately Bristol couldn't score enough.
Mm.
And because they
Uh,
don't turn the ball over, he can't score in transition much either. So
yeah,
it
yeah.
really becomes a how do we get our points? And that's why they scored 57 in a 40-minute game with a 14-second reset.
Mm. London had an 18-5 start to the fourth quarter to lead 68-53. That was the game. You mentioned Rye, 15 points, 13 rebounds. Philip, 15.6 rebounds, 5 assists. Reynolds, 14 points. Jonathan Brown, 18 points. That's his best tally for Bristol. His second best was actually the previous game where he got 16.
How many shots?
Uh, hey,
You got shot numbers there. It was,
I haven't got his shot numbers to hand. No, he was 8 rebounds as well. Kristen had 11. Nobody else in double figures.
and that doesn't surprise me because Brown was actually the guy who had the biggest athletic advantage in the game. And we've talked previously about London, about the one thing that where you can get at them, and is the quick guards. And Brown hits that kind of off the dribble quickness. Um, but
Seven
Devin
of 19 he was
with
shooting.
19. Now he's got 19 shots. Now he's not their most efficient um, offensive player. That's Zach Anderson. That's Cameron Christian. That's Will Yoakum. Yeah.
The
So
next most shots in the game was 5.
So he's your starting point guard, and your starting point guard's put up 19 points because London are taking 19 shots because London are taking everything else away, and that's why Joe Anderson is in the MVP
Mm,
conversation
mm,
because he gets those shots for all those other guys.
mm,
The team is literally built around him creating those shots.
mm,
So Jonathan Brown can come in and be the energy, the aggressive guard, the guy who can get the combo, who can get to the rim, can create for people. Totally different feeling if you've got to run the whole team and get shots for everybody
mm,
against a Euro Cup level defense.
mm. Let's go to Newcastle Eagles 93, Manchester Basketball 120.
Must we?
We must. It's since been announced that Cleary is done for the season. Kane Henry is also out with the knee injury from the cup final. Nicholson off the bench in this one, who wasn't even the first sub when Osborne got poked in his eye. It was
Well, that's just them.
Shelton
That
came
was
in.
just Manchester matching up with Newcastle's five out because Newcastle are playing with Cole Long as a centre,
Mm,
and I don't think I think Matt Orton's probably seen that movie once or twice, too many times
mm,
before.
yeah,
About letting someone like Long get off early,
yeah,
and strange that with any other stretch five in the league, it's a tough matchup for Nicholson. So
yeah.
you'd understand why he would do that. But for Newcastle, um,
Manchester scored the first 5 points. They led early. Long and Taylor hit threes. Newcastle were up 5 in the first quarter as well.
well, it's just kind of you score, we score.
Mm,
Um, and then incidentally, when Nicholson did come in, Okafor drilled a couple of threes over him as well because
mm,
Okafor's split into stretch five,
mm,
and Newcastle have kind of really dug into that way of playing. Um, But what Newcastle couldn't do was basically play any form of find any way of stopping what is a very talented Manchester team.
Mm,
And I mean, it's the first time I've seen Manchester in the flesh. It's the first time they've been up north. And there are a few things that, about them that really impress me. There's a couple of things that slightly you can see their ceiling, and you can also see their Achilles heel, and that team is right in front of you. Um, Jones kind of blew me away a little bit. I didn't think he was that good.
mm,
I mean, maybe he isn't that good, but he scored 25 points on the Eagles without really breaking sweat. And that was by the end of the third quarter. He hardly played in the fourth. And you've seen him a lot this year in person.
I should probably get you to rephrase that as you didn't think he was that good rather than he wasn't that good. It could
So
come
yeah,
across
yeah,
as the wrong way around.
I did actually say you got it right. I got
Yeah,
it
yeah,
wrong. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't think he was that good.
yeah.
But and talk about skill level wise, his ability to score the ball. The first play of the game, I think Osborne got an offensive rebound, kicked it out, and he drained a three. Then he drained another one, and he played within himself. And he's able to go left, he's able to go right. He's got good size. He can finish with both hands.
Mm,
He looked like a really high level skilled guard. And I think sometimes his slightly dubious shot selection kind of hides that. Certainly
mm,
watching it on the TV,
mm,
watching it in person, I'm thinking, look, this guy could be really, really good.
mm,
I'm talking about levels above what we watch in the SLB. That was the first thing. Um, the second thing was obviously that even missing those two players, they are deep. They got three centres, and arguably without Cam, when you play in Newcastle, really don't have one at the moment.
mm.
Um, and the third thing, obviously, is something I already had figured out, which is that Jordan Johnson is really good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, what I will say though is that Newcastle gave up 68 points in the paint in this game. Their defense in the first half was not great, albeit
Mm,
it wasn't awful. In the second half, they basically capitulated. I mean,
mm,
some of their transition defense was diabolical.
mm,
Um, I mean, there was no. I was watching the game and thinking, when basketball, 5 on 5 in the half court, it's like a dance.
mm.
Players are dancing with each other. There's five guys following each other around. Occasionally, you might swap partners. You might set a
Yeah,
screen,
yeah.
you know
Little
what I
loads
mean?
you know.
As you do, there might be a spin. Every
Mm,
so often, you might catch your partner with an unfortunate elbow. These things happen, right?
mm.
But it's a dance,
Yeah,
right? And in a dance, somebody leads and somebody follows. Is that right? I've
yeah,
not
yeah.
watched
It's
Strictly. I'm
true.
not
Yeah, it's
made
true.
to.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
avoid like
yeah,
the plague. Obviously, I mean, I'm not even a
yeah.
gladiators person, but let alone Strictly. But somebody leads, somebody follows. And Manchester were in the lead. Whenever Manchester had
Mm,
the ball in this game, they were the lead. And Jordan
mm,
Johnson in particular, who to me is a player that the only thing you can do with him is try and speed him up.
mm,
And okay, you could double him and maybe say he's a bit little, maybe try and get him to throw the ball out, throw the ball over the double team into a 4-on-3 situation. But he's too good at splitting. He's too good low at the ground at splitting the screen and roll and getting to the hoop that way. So I just think you've got to speed him up. And I think you've got to harass him. Now, that's easier said than done. But in the half court in particular, Newcastle did not harass him at all. Newcastle let him go wherever he wants. He was running a waltz, he was running a salsa,
mm,
bit of Argentine tango. I mean, he could go wherever he wanted, left foot finish, right, And if you watch really good perimeter defense, I watched it a lot when I was coaching, and also you see it now with some of the better teams and some of the more aggressive teams, and that's not just London. I watched Cheshire on Friday on Sunday. They were really up at people. If you're guarding the ball, if you stay stationary and you make yourself kind of a set distance away from the person with the ball, that person with the ball is, no risk to that person with the ball. You're between him and the basket, so technically you're playing defense, yeah? But you're not pressuring. You're not making him think, and he's able to look over you, dribble the ball, look over you, point people where they want to go, and run what they want to run. Okay? Now that's Jordan Johnson. That's death
mm,
because he has got he's got enough savvy, whatever. He's what he isn't. The only thing he isn't is lightning quick.
mm,
He's quick over short distance, but not lightning quick over, maybe a half court period. So you have to find a way to speed them up. And I thought Newcastle just stood there. They let themselves be screened. They half switched. They didn't. they didn't harass, they didn't show any degree of disruption, and they got picked apart by a very good team
Mm,
who were in rhythm. What I will say about, because we always talk about teams as if they're a homogenous group of individuals, they're not. When Newcastle didn't have Clark or Long on the court, their defense just fell apart.
mm,
Clark in this game played 26 minutes. He was -4.
mm,
They lost the other 14 minutes by 24. He
mm.
didn't score a basket.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
had 1 point, yet he was -4, right? Long was about a -10 in 20 odd minutes, and the Eagles lost by 30. And so the other, and it is noticeable at times that they have some units, and they don't have that many. They have to sub, obviously, because they don't have that many players at the moment, but they have some units who are not either minded to guard or capable of guarding.
Mm,
I mean, and yeah, Manchester played very, very well, but to give up 67 in the second half on your home floor, to give
yeah.
up some of the stuff in transition that they gave up, even though they have mitigation, Manchester have been playing high pressure games. Newcastle had 12 days off. That's not easy to deal with. And you saw it, the Eagles missed layups in transition, 3 point plays at the other end. Eagles get a rebound, they throw it straight to a guy for a layup twice,
Mm,
you know, and it was just a pretty soporific Newcastle performance, and Manchester looked like looked $1 million.
mm,
But they're not $1 million team. They're probably a $100,000 team. Newcastle
mm,
made it look a million.
mm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, Smith got his fourth foul on a technical in the second quarter. Bowen had his fourth foul early in the third quarter, but Jones and Johnson just pushed them out into a double-figure lead, and they were comfortable in the third quarter. You intimated it there, Dave. I just wondered what you made of the Shelton elbow on Burden at the end of the third quarter. My take was that he'd come up with the ball. He was surrounded by two players, so we were sort of elbows out at that point. I don't really have a problem. It didn't look to me like he actually swung it. It looked like he just sort of left it there for Burden's head to make contact with
yeah.
it. Now he probably could have pulled it away, but I'm not sure that he has to. Two refs were either side of it, so they had a good looked like they had a good
I
line
do
of
think
sight of it.
my impression was that the refs initially were kind of looking down the court for what looked like it was going to be an outlet pass when he threw it.
Mm, mm,
My view was he my view was I'm not able to say that was intentional, even with it
no,
being Shelton.
no.
I don't think it was because he apologized.
I,
He didn't say on
yeah.
the camera
I honestly think his elbow was out there,
hmm.
and he could have pulled it away, but he didn't. But that's not the same as swinging it into somebody. So,
I think it's. I mean, I watched it once. I haven't watched it back.
yeah,
Um, my initial view was that they should have called something.
yeah,
I don't think you're entitled. And if elbow hits point, I mean, if you remember Duke Shelton, bless him, he once
yeah,
got
yeah. For
caught some like
flexing.
for flexing,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
which was very harsh.
I thought in the Leicester game he might do it again because there was one where did he come up with a block or he no he
Yeah,
laid
he
it
did.
in and he went like that and I thought oh here we go he's going to get
Again.
done for that
So
but
there is a basket, there is a basket, and so I don't think you could say that it wasn't definitively a basketball play.
yeah
So that's right. But my view is, Bean had this argument with you last year about the Newcastle Leicester
yeah
when Cole Long got.
yeah yeah
My
yeah
view is that if somebody's elbow hits somebody's chin, then it takes a lot for me to persuade, a lot to be persuaded that it's not a foul.
yeah yeah
Because you got to protect the player. So I think, and on top of that, poor Burden. I mean, I've talked a lot about some of the Eagles guys, but Burden doesn't half play hard.
yeah
He
yeah
was, he gets jumps up and down. He gets knocked around. You remember the cup final where he was all over the floor and he's
yeah
not
yeah
taking it. He's not a flopper.
yeah
So he's allowed to stand where he stands.
mm,
And unfortunately, you don't. If both Burden didn't headbutt his elbow,
mm.
ergo there has to be some movement of elbow towards head, right? And it might
I
be.
didn't think there was
Uh,
honestly I watched it a couple of times back and I thought you know what I don't think he's moved his elbow I think he's just left it there and Burden's gone into him
well, you might be right. You
yeah
may you that might,
yeah
I didn't watch it back. I saw it
yeah
the first time. My initial thought was, "Oh, you missed one there." My
mm.
initial thought wasn't. That's a disgrace.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
obviously, the whole arena thinks that's a disgrace.
Yeah, yeah, of
My
course it is.
initial thought, but my initial thought was, if somebody's elbow makes contact with somebody's face, then,
Yeah, yeah,
then you know, unless you're really saying that, this 5'7" point guard is running at the elbow of a six
yeah.
foot eight forward, you know, carelessly, which I don't think.
That's kind of what I'm saying, but I
Yeah,
do think that Shelton could have moved his elbow out the way. His elbow didn't need to be there, but
Um,
that's that. The question is, does that matter? I
well,
don't know.
I don't know. But yeah, so it happened. I mean, by that point, I was, to be honest, I was too frustrated with Newcastle's transition
Yeah,
defense to be
yeah,
particularly irate about anything.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, then did you get the bit with the mascot?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Swoop the Eagle, channeling
Oh,
his inner Foxy there.
yeah, I'm afraid, and like, yeah, absolutely. I'm afraid.
Yeah,
What happened was the ball ended up down the far end of the court for some reason, of a dead play, and
yeah,
ended up and swooped the Eagles into the basket at the other end of the court, and he put his foot on the ball, and instead of throwing it back where he should have thrown it, he kind of flicks it off to the side and kind of
yeah,
a fit of pique at the fact that
yeah,
the
yeah,
haven't called something.
yeah,
Um, I'll be honest, I'm going to be consistent on this.
yeah, yeah.
The Fox had done it, I'd have been furious.
Yeah. And so you're not a big fan of mascots talking trash to referees? No,
No, I'm not a fan of
there was
Master.
a good camera angle of
Yeah,
Swoop sort of pointing at the
yeah.
referee.
I'm not a fan of mascots being involved at
No.
any point in any interaction with the game officials when the game is going on.
Well,
They
the other
told me,
the thing about the sort of pointing bit was he was on the call, and it was like, well, I'm not sure
but I think
about
that,
that.
yeah, I think the ball kind of came towards him, so he wasn't on the
I
court.
say he. I don't know what gender the eagle
No, I don't
is.
know either.
So
The ball came towards him, so I'm not that
yeah,
fussed about that because it was kind of retrieving the ball. But then it was like a little back heel to the side, and I'm like, no, I'm not a fan.
no, no,
I'm not going to defend Swoop. I'm
no.
not, ultimately you're not part of the game. If the ball happens to throw you, throw the ball back on,
Mm,
and you're not part of the game. It's not your job to interact with referees. It's not, and as I say, it's been this time immemorial ever
mm.
since the Fox and the shorts and all sorts of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah. I can't even
Um,
remember whose shorts they were.
tails, tails.
Teo. Oh, okay.
Two. It was John
Yeah,
and two.
yeah.
It was a Fox. It was Plymouth, and
Mm,
ran caught and pulled down one of the Guildford players' shorts.
mm.
Um, but no, mascot, get the crowd going. Not your job to be interacting with officials.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Burden 20 points, 8 of 10 shooting. Taylor 19, 3 of 13 shooting, but he was 11 of 16 from the free throw line, and 5 assists.
Yeah, he
Jack's
did a bit of Americaning in the fourth quarter, Dan.
Yeah, yeah. Jack 16, 6 of 8 shooting.
I thought
Ja
I thought Jack played like he was in a dream. I thought he was just like I thought he was off the speed. I just didn't see him in. Just never got into the game at all. I was really quite frustrated with him. He's got so much in the way of physical tools.
Jones 26, Smith 23, Johnson 18 points and 9 assists. And the good thing about you boycotting Mr. Musk's social media
Yeah,
is I can give you first-hand quality stats that I put out on Twitter, and
yeah, absolutely.
you won't
So
have
I
seen.
haven't seen them before. Yeah,
So there's two here. I
you
think you'll
get two
really,
audiences. Yeah,
yeah, I think you'll really like the second one, Dave. But
right.
the
Okay.
first one is that's the most points Manchester have scored, Manchester basketball.
Yeah.
Their previous high was 112 against the Parva. The last time a team from Manchester scored 120 points was the last iteration of the Giants. So they scored 124 in 2 overtime in February 2019. The last time a Manchester team scored that many points in regulation was the old Giants, 129 in January 1999. That's quite a long time
Wow.
ago.
Was the overtime game when Mike McCall scored 50?
That might have been it. Yeah, yeah. I didn't. I
Yeah.
can't. I didn't
I
write
think
down
McCall
who was
scored.
playing, but it might well be because he did score 50 in 2 OT.
Yeah.
Um, and then I've not written. I've only written down half the stat. I'm going to actually have to remember it now.
Oh
I can't
dear.
believe it. I've
Oh
only
dear.
written down half the stat, which was the 120 points that Manchester. I need to look it up because I
Well,
can't. I need to give you the
yeah. Phil,
percentage,
Phil,
Dave.
Phil, desperately,
I've
Phil.
yeah, I know. I've totally messed this up, haven't I? This is how far back have I gone now
Ladies and
to find
gentlemen,
this.
he has a
Here we
flaw.
go. So they scored. Manchester scored 120 points, right, which was
Yeah.
89.6% of the total points scored in London Bristol, 77.57. And that was the highest percentage on the same day since the 3rd of December 2021 when Leicester scored 105 and Sheffield and Plymouth combined for 113. There's only been 69 games in the history of top flight British basketball where there's been more percentage scored than that. Nine of them were overtime, and the other half is it was
Outstanding.
the biggest percentage not to involve overtime or a lower league team was 108.4 when Old Manchester Giants scored 116 and Cheshire and Doncaster combined for 107 on the 17th of October 1993. The record is 122.1% when Worthing scored 127 points in a league game and Barnsley and Doncaster combined for 104, but they were both D1 teams. It was a cup game, so it was top flight game,
Barnsley
but they were both
do
in the
not
lower
have
leagues.
any
And
memory of a team from Barnsley.
14th of December 1991. They would have only played. They never played in the top division. They just played in the cup competitions back in the day at the
Back
National Cup.
even then,
Barnsley Generals, if I remember rightly.
generals. Well, not just the
Mm,
sergeants or the
mm.
majors, but the
Yeah,
generals.
the
Huh?
Generals. Yeah, yeah.
In common with the Washington Generals, maybe.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, dear. No, never mind. Well, if you play for that Barnsley team and you're listening to this, that's a hell of a coincidence.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go. So let's after that
Right.
delicious start.
Smorgasbord.
Yeah, let's move
That
on to Sunday. Manchester basketball 89, Leicester Riders 86. No Jordan Johnson for Manchester. Just when it looked like it couldn't get any worse for Rob Paternoster. Spencer Johnson had a season-ending injury in the Bucks final in midweek. They did manage to sign Keedy Johnson, who arrived on Saturday but wasn't quite eligible to play, so he was there but couldn't play. Mike Joyner, who played for Loughborough this season, uh, joined the lineup. And
is
Flynn
going very
Boardman
good.
Rafe, there we go. Flynn Boardman Rafe was back and into the starters, and he started really well as well. Not a lot in this until Manchester had an 8-0 run to put them 25-15 ahead.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of Manchester reading the team sheets, if I'm honest.
Mm,
But the problem is, Leicester are competitive and committed,
mm,
and that means they're a trap game.
mm,
They're just finding out at the moment that you can be as competitive and committed as possible, as you possibly can be. You can play to, 110% of your
mm,
level. But if your body's right down to the point where they're at, it's
mm.
still very difficult to win games in this
Yeah,
league.
yeah.
So you end up with Pyrrhic victories and moral victories and England
Well, I
and
mean,
that type of stuff.
there
But
is no moral victory, but they've played unbelievably well
yeah,
for
exactly.
for
For what
for
they have.
one win.
Yeah, for what they have. And as you say, it's got harder, and it's just never rain. It's not rain, but it's poured. And
Mm,
and people wonder why the players not play as many minutes anymore. Well, then I don't know what Spencer Johnson's injury was, but he's played 40 plus minutes in three or
mm,
four consecutive games.
mm,
But with a high usage, much higher than he's used to. So
mm,
so that's why players get injured
mm,
ultimately. Because their bodies, whatever reason, aren't used to going at that speed at that level.
mm,
But Bowman Raphael comes back and showed an absolutely entirely different string to his bow, didn't he? Let's be
mm.
honest.
Yeah.
And this is the thing about, it's where talent and opportunity meet.
Mm,
It's all about opportunity. And Bowman Raphael come in late towards the end of the preseason. I think he didn't sign straight away. I don't think. He's probably been, they got their six imports, Sulaiman as well. They had Shelton at the time. So he's the eighth or the ninth man
mm,
when he comes in. And what eighth or ninth man means is basically that, you come on with a couple of minutes to go in the first quarter. You're not getting the ball in your hands much
mm,
because you've got three guards who are ball dominant. Means you're in the corner, you having to move without the ball, get the odd offensive rebound, knock down a three. If you make your first couple of shots, then you play a bit more.
mm,
You don't make your first couple of shots, you maybe got 5 or 6 minutes, and you're out until the second half.
mm,
You don't have a chance, basically. And then suddenly we get to a situation whereby he basically is the starting two guard and the only two guard.
mm,
And what they were able to do is he became Spencer Johnson. They ran
mm,
all the stuff for him that they used to run that they were running for Spencer Johnson, where they're
mm,
getting the ball at the top and the high screen and And what he showed was, yeah, he can knock down shots, but I think, most guys in the SLB at his level can knock down shots. I don't think that was just, he's not a lights out shooter, but he's someone you got to respect. But what he showed in this game was his ability to handle in the screen and roll, to get defenders on his back in particular,
Mm,
to be crafty and creative around the rim, as well as all the extra hustle points and the little tip ins and that type of stuff. And that was really encouraging
mm,
for him and for Leicester. Now, it's a big issue. Now the issue is, he's going to have a run now whereby he's going to be the featured guy for 3, 4, 5 games now.
mm,
Even with Keely Johnson back in, he's earned it. Yeah. So now the question is going to be, is he able to adapt when teams throw different looks at him? I didn't think Manchester did a great job of defending him because, particularly when it's all right pressing up on him, but as soon as he was able to turn on the screen and roll, as soon as the defender was on his back, he was brilliant.
mm,
He was able to make plays and draw fouls and all sorts of stuff. So, I think teams will have to start scouting that now and work out
mm,
what to do. But for any British guy to come in off an injury who hasn't played much all season and drop 35 on Manchester,
mm, mm.
it was a Cholovinska style
Yeah,
performance
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and a coming out party type thing.
Mm,
And that's Cholovinska's from last year at Leicester. Um, Manchester, obviously playing without Johnson, it does limit them. I
mm,
mean, one of the biggest problems Newcastle had on Friday night was that Smith got 4 fouls.
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Johnson started the second quarter, the second half,
Mm,
and just picked them to bits. Um, and I'm wondering now if Coach Otten is looking back at that cup final and think they could have put him in a bit earlier in the second.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Having
yeah.
seen him in the flesh, I'm like, oh, whatever. Um, but so that is a miss because there are times where they've only got the one pure guard on the court, and to be honest, there's an argument that the best when they've got all three. And also Leicester did a really good job of getting the ball inside.
Mm,
Menzies in particular, it was impactful. They rebounded everything. Rob threw in zones and anything he could to kind of
mm,
mess them around. And again, that zone is a lot better when Johnson's not on the court, because he can shoot that 30-footer and when you think you're guarding him, but you're not. If you've only got the one shooter, one guard on the court, it helps. And the hardest thing is just when you're undermanned, is just getting over the line.
yeah, yeah. Leicester got it down to 4. Went back to 10. That was the pattern for the game, really. Manchester ahead, but never really getting a row. Riders had 9 in a row. 4 for Menzies, 5 for Boardman Rappe to cut it to 77-75. I wasn't convinced at that stage they were going to get enough stops, and Manchester was still ahead. 124 to go, 87-81 after Jones with 2 free throws. We'll just run through the last minute. 103 to go. Suleiman gets to the rim, 87-83. Jones misses a 3. Boardman Rappe misses a 3. Jones on the breakaway. Boardman Rappe with the steal.
Well, slow down, just
Yeah,
slow down. Whoa.
yeah.
I didn't mention it in relation to the Newcastle Manchester game. I talked about how well Manchester played. Their foibles were also on show in
Mm,
that game.
mm,
In the middle of the third quarter, they were very actually close to cracking. They got
mm,
Smith had got a technical. Johnson was getting a technical. Also, Boyd committed a ridiculous fourth foul in that game
mm, mm.
after like 45 feet from the basket.
Yeah, yeah.
With in the middle of the third quarter, and that's where they're not London because
Mm,
they are emotional. Emotions can be good, but ultimately, Max Jones, you're up by 3 or by 4,
mm.
sorry. You
Yeah,
have the
4.
ball with 40 seconds to go. You are not running a 2-on-1 fast break and throwing the
Mm.
ball away.
Yeah, yeah.
You are dribbling to the halfway line and you are running the clock, and they are fouling you, and the game
Yeah,
is over.
yeah, yeah.
And, and it's got all the good things I said about Max Jones in relation to previously. That game at Newcastle, I was blown away by
Mm.
his level, the level he was at. Um, you got to sort the head out. The decision making has to be better.
Because
Everybody.
actually, it was probably more like about 20, 25 seconds when he turned the ball over. So
So
they could have
basically,
taken the clock. The clock was on, but not by. There was not much differential between
yeah.
shot and
Oh,
game
they were
clock.
gonna. It was a foul situation.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's a foul situation. Yeah, if you've got a dunk, you throw it for a dunk, but you don't
mm,
throw that pass at that point.
yeah, yeah.
You just can't. I mean, I say it's not criminal because that would be an offence, but
Mm,
it's immature.
mm,
I couldn't see. the London guys doing that.
No.
You have to know the time score in the situation. So,
Mm.
Bob Raffin with a great steal, and then an even better pass in transition to get it to Evie.
Yeah.
When he's got 35, you're entitled to go and do whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
You made the right play. But that's a team immaturity thing. They
Mm.
cannot give that game. They could have given that game away because of that play.
Yeah, 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 definitely. Evie made the three with 19.3 seconds to go, so it's 87-86. Leicester didn't foul quickly. I think they were trying to force an 8-second violation. They were close to it.
Yeah,
Uh,
decent strategy. I didn't mind that. I
yeah.
thought, well, you never know that London,
It
Manchester.
got to, I think it was about 7.2 or something like
Yeah,
that when
yeah,
they
right.
got over the line, so they were close to it. And then Evie did foul, but it's a sideline ball because they've
Yeah.
got one to give. So 9.6 seconds. Smith is then fouls with 7.5 seconds to go. He makes both free throws. Timeout, advance the ball. Evie deep three, only just off. It comes off the iron, and that's the game.
I don't think they're getting a better shot than that.
No.
Not with the lineup they have on the court. It's hard, but Evie's what, another 40-minute game or very close,
Yeah,
30
yeah,
minutes. I
yeah,
think he came out in the third quarter, so
yeah.
probably another 37 minutes.
He definitely had 7 seconds off at the end of the first quarter. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So yeah, I
And
mean,
he's just made one 10 seconds
oh
earlier.
yeah,
So,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But man, yeah, but it's as I say, it's the hardest thing in the world is in when you're undermanned in basketball games is to play that well, but
Mm.
still you've got to get over the line because
Yeah, yeah,
margins for error, the opposition has such a greater margin for error than you do.
yeah, yeah.
And even with Flynn, Bob, and Rafa going for 35, and Travis Evie stepping up, and the other guys rebounding, and
Mm,
Menzies scoring inside,
mm,
you still have to deal with the fact that you throw a zone in there, and then Max Jones just drains one from 30 feet out at the elbow extended,
mm.
and Rob's looking at it thinking, well, we can't guard everything.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
eventually, the shot makers kind of hang up, and then they throw another body at you and another body at you. Um, the test for Leicester it is now. Johnson will help. Obviously, he'll give them another score. He'll give a bit more rest. He'll give them more floor balance with what they've got. The test is how much have they committed to the last 3 or 4 games. They've lost
Yeah,
a time game. They've had to go to Caledonia, then they lose that game. In the last few minutes, and the bodies are going down. So mentally, are they going to be able to keep going at that level?
yeah,
Very difficult to play. And they were 110% of that level on
yeah,
Sunday. And it's very difficult to keep doing that. Whereas Manchester get one of those cruise wins whereby they're happy they've won, but the coach is probably thinking, Jesus, I'm glad that game's out of the way.
yeah, 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 yeah. Smith 27, 5 of 9 threes, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. Jones 26 points, 9 rebounds, added to Cassie 13. Flynn Bournemouth Rafe 35 points, 10 of 18 shooting, 11 of 15 from the free throw line, 12 fouls drawn. Evie 16 points, 8 assists. Menzies 7 of 9 shooting, 14.7 rebounds. 35 is Bournemouth Rafe's career high. He had 30 in college, 35 in this one. 12 fouls drawn as well is the most by a Leicester player since that stat was tracked on live stats.
And
Goes back to 18-19.
who was the last British qualified player to go for 35?
Well, I would assume it's Kofi Josephs. I've not looked it up, but he obviously had that 40, whatever he had. Was it 47 or something? He had a
Yeah,
lot. I can't
he
remember
had
what
a
it was.
ridiculous game where he
And
didn't get
Plymouth against Manchester, it was an
yeah.
overtime game, and
Right, right, yeah.
I assume it was him. I've not checked, but I assume it was him.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody since.
Mm.
Um, I'll come to it. I can't.
Uh, so Sheffield Sharks 99, Surrey 89ers 96 after overtime. And the stat I was told before this game is if Surrey had won this game, you'll know instantly who's told me this. If
Yeah,
Surrey had won this game, they would have been 4-0
yeah,
against Sheffield in league play,
yeah,
which had only happened, I think it was 4 times or 5 times. Obviously, it
yeah,
didn't play 4 times for
yeah.
a large chunk of it. Every team that had beaten Sheffield 4-0 in the league had won a trophy that season. So if
Mm-hmm.
Surrey had won this game, we might as well give up. They would have won the
They've been
playoffs.
put
They're
up. Well,
guaranteed to win the playoffs.
yeah, there's a reason. I suppose they didn't.
Yeah, well,
Um, yeah,
uh, we've obviously touched on Lee, and so they brought in Troy D'Amico as presumably a replacement. No Andrew Lawrence, but Tyron Lawrence was back, and Ling was back wearing a mask. I did watch all of this back. I had obviously watched some of it in Cheshire, but I did
yeah.
put it on last night when I got home, and it was one of them where there wasn't. I watched it, but there really wasn't that much going on. Most of the game, it was a couple of scores either way.
Yeah, Sheffield, again, the game it was interesting because it ended up basically being small ball with five guards on the court on each team, apart from Small, Isaiah Small. The only big guy was
Small.
ironically called Small. Sheffield finished the game with basically five little guys, and for a team that's been rotating big guys in all season, that struck me is almost like. You've got to get all of these players on the court somehow. You've got to get Kerr on the court, you've got to get Chapman on the court, you've got to get Nixon on the court, etc. And Surrey, and that played Graham off the court, so he wasn't on the court for Surrey. Um, it was, yeah, it was a weird game because both teams did what they do. Surrey are more predictable in what they do because they have fewer combinations on the court. Sheffield go through more peaks and troughs because there are times when some guys aren't contributing and they come off and then somebody else comes in. Also, they were bringing a new guy in who really didn't make much of an impact in the game. So there's some kind of down minutes there as well. But yeah, you're right. Ultimately, fundamentally it was a game which Surrey lost because they couldn't make a foul shot. Let's be honest.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's why they lost.
Kofi Joseph,
Um,
46, by the way. I just looked it up. It was
uh,
November 21 was the last. Looking through the names, is the last British player to have gone for 35 that I can
really
see.
good
Yeah.
spot. Good knowledge as well. Because I hadn't remembered that. So yeah, so the game, as you say, the game kind of went back and forward. Nixon gave Sheffield a bit of a boost, and then Dirk Williams kind of got involved in the third quarter. But Surrey are a team you have to play consistent against because you think you've got them, and then maybe Small will just pop out and hit a three, and he hasn't made one all game. And then every time Lily gets a ball, he's just a dynamite shooter. He's at like 47% from three this year now,
Mm,
and so you never quite feel like they're out of the game.
mm.
They're quite systematic and they don't beat themselves. Thought Polite was excellent in this game again.
The only thing I noted down in between all of that was obviously Nedas went out with an ankle injury on a collision with Nwankwo, but he did come back a bit later on. Didn't play much in the game, but he did come back. And Idle Rock ended up with a cut in his head. I didn't see what happened there. I didn't know.
No, neither did I. I mean, there's a couple of things I saw. I mean, we had another one of those kind of referee calls a foul, then a more experienced referee overrules him.
I did, yeah, I did hear Lloyd. How can you change that? You call the foul.
Well, he's right.
Mm.
And this is the problem. I mean, and we had one. There was a play near the end, which we'll get to as well, whereby we had a referee call a foul. The same ref called the foul, but basically didn't know what he called. And it ended up being a call against Surrey. But I mean, my understanding of this now, I might be right, I might be wrong. Is that if you Prentice Nixon and you get a clean steal on the ball, which it probably was a clean steal on the ball, he's almost appealing to Joe Hodgson, who's the other ref, to say, look, he didn't call it,
Mm.
and then the ref who calls it changed his mind. I mean, I've never seen I don't remember in 30 years seeing a referee undo a foul call,
Mm.
right? Actually, yes, there's one. There was one, Rob Hickman, when down at Reading v Newcastle, where maybe one of the Reading players or Newcastle players in a trophy game got called for a flop until suddenly it became apparent that he was bleeding all over the court.
Mm.
And the flop got rescinded. Fair enough, okay, out from his nose, whatever. But if you call a foul, that's it. I don't think you get to then call a foul and have a conversation. Oh, I don't think that was a foul. I think that was a foul. Otherwise, can you imagine every time there's a foul call, the one player's looking at somebody else going,
Yeah, yeah.
it's not a good look because it's not a good look because unfortunately you got refs at different levels of seniority.
Mm,
And unfortunately, every time we've seen it happen this year, and it's happened, as I say, I don't think I've ever seen it happen before. It's happened 3 or 4 times this year. It's been generally the less qualified ref, the one who's helped out at the beginning of the season, who've been kept on, who's been overruled by the more qualified one.
mm,
When I say more qualified, I just mean higher coaching level, higher
mm,
referee level badge.
mm,
Okay, nothing to do with their levels. And so I'm not sure why we're still having this situation in the middle of March. And I do know that, and again, because I don't do my own research, obviously, because other people do research for me. Thank you. Certainly do. I just take the glory.
yeah.
But I do know that, there appear to have been a larger number of inexperienced, quote marks, new refs refing at Sheffield this year than anywhere else. And I just wonder, and I wonder aloud because I don't know, I genuinely
Mm,
don't know, if there are still issues with certain refs agreeing to ref at Sheffield after last year, after
mm,
what happened with Udansky, or if there are certain kind of no-go areas where certain refs aren't sent. But I was sent the numbers, and they're
mm.
quite surprising.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean, in relation to the general experience level of the refs there. So. I mean, there's a lot to be said for obviously we have to give them until the summer to really sort it out.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
interested to see how that goes going forward. But the problem with imbalance of experience, and that's what it is. It's not talent, it's not effort, it's experience, right?
Mm,
The problem with having an imbalance of experience is that the bottom line is every referee's whistle sounds the same.
mm.
Every referee's whistle is worth the same.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And if one ref blows a call, then the minute that call is overturned by another ref, if you don't blow a call, that's fine. You know, to have a chat about it and see what happens.
Mm.
The minute that's overturned, and I'm not talking about the who did it tip last or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
about a foul call.
Yeah, yeah.
You blew your whistle, put your hand in the air because you saw a foul. If you saw that foul, you've got to stick with it. That's a
Yeah,
call. You
yeah.
can't have referee, you can't have players being and coaches being able to lobby a different ref to
Yeah,
turn
yeah.
against each other. That just makes the whole situation unmanageable.
Mm.
And believe me, it'll happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Don't think
Yeah.
it won't happen. Don't think everybody in the league doesn't watch that and think, oh, next time he's over there. I mean, look, we had some of the highest level refs we've ever had in this country, Alan Richardson, Neil Wilkinson,
Mm,
whatever. Ref at the high level, they would never overturn a call of one of their mates.
mm.
They might make a makeup call the further end the next time down. But you don't undermine your teammate.
Mm. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was difficult. But yeah, outside
Should we
that,
get to the
yeah,
end
let's
because we've
get to
got
the end. Yeah.
overtime to go through as well? So it's 81-80 going into the last 2 minutes. Kern in the dunker spot, 148 to go, lays it in to make it 83-80 to Sheffield. 128 to go. Teo with the three ties the scores, 83-83. Ali Hodgett misses from mid-range. Teo this time to the rim, 54.2 seconds to go.
Small ball versus big guy.
Yeah, yeah,
They was
83-85.
playing the five spot effectively, and Farrow's playing the five spot, and Teo gets 5 points out of it. Now, neither of them were Farrow's fault because on the first one, there was a switch on the play. I think
Mm,
Nixon left Teo because Nixon wasn't used to the switch, and on the second one, Teo made a hell of a play.
yeah, yeah.
You don't want him shooting a three, you run him off, and he makes that play. It was a hell of a
Mm,
play.
mm,
But so many games finish up with that kind of the five-man spot dictating everything. Can you make a shot or not?
mm. 40 seconds to go. Chapman drives, is fouled, goes to the free throw line, makes the first, misses the second.
Mm.
So 84-85. Polite then drives, 19.6 seconds to go, foul by Kern. He misses the first. So it's 84-86
Yeah.
to Surrey. Timeout, advance the ball. Nice play. Ali Hodgett to the rim. Teo did a great job of helping without fouling. He misses the shot. Surrey with the rebound. Sheffield find foul Lawrence with 9.2 seconds to go. And he misses both free throws.
I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, they missed 12 in the game. They're
Yeah.
50% in the game. I mean, that,
Mm.
that was the game. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
if you miss three foul shots, and that's 20 seconds on the road, then,
Mm.
you've given the opposition a chance. And for Lawrence, who's been, collected and cool and the other word, calm. Sorry,
Calm.
I don't like saying cliche, so I thought I'd
Mm.
say that in a different order. For him to miss two
Mm.
was surprising,
Yeah, yeah.
surprising. But he gave and on top of that, for him then not to get back on defense was absolutely
Mm.
mind-bogglingly annoying. But
Yeah,
he's lost in his own head
yeah,
if he
yeah.
takes two foul shots, and he only sees his Kern run past him at half court.
And he kept on running right down the middle, tied the scores at 86 points apiece. Timeout advanced the ball.
But here's the
Um,
thing, Dan, that's
yeah,
off your own foul shot, right?
yeah, yeah.
You don't need to have anybody rebound. If you're not, you don't need to. I don't have to have anybody rebounding or not, but you don't need to,
Mm,
right? You're up two. If he makes it, you're up three. They're probably going to call a timeout, right?
yeah.
Or if you put two guys next to the on the foul line, maybe you commit an offensive foul on the foul on the loose ball, which would be bad. Also, you've got two guys who've got to run back with the players.
Mm,
Your guys should be back at the half court setting your defense
mm,
up at that point.
mm,
You really are not, the risk reward on the offensive rebound is too low.
mm,
To have a situation where you miss the shot and the guy catches the ball and literally goes 80 feet right down the middle of the court and doesn't
mm,
meet anybody until that
mm,
person's actually inside the circle
mm,
is just mind-bogglingly awful.
mm,
Not just not from a technical side of it, just from a mentality side of it. You stop the ball.
yeah, yeah,
It's Nick
yeah,
Kern. He's going to the rim. That's basically where he goes anyway. He's like a
yeah.
sat nav. He's got a sat nav on his head all the time. There's the rim. Beep, beep, beep.
Mm,
He finds his way to the rim. And you know, you miss three foul shots, then you give up that.
yeah, yeah,
Kind of vitiate your right to win the game.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Timeout advanced. Well, I think Small was meant to get it back to one of the guards, but he couldn't, and he ended up taking a tough long range shot and hit the front rim, and we go to overtime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Surrey up four early in overtime, but Kern tied the scores at 92. Let's go through the end of this one. Minute 15 to go. Nixon a deep three on the shot clock buzzer after Kern nearly lost it on the floor to make it 95-94, 1:15 to go.
Hell of a shot by Nixon.
Mm,
His shot.
mm,
2 seconds to go on the 3 point line.
yeah.
What am I saying? I'm saying, why are you letting him shoot that ball?
Well, I think he was closer to the halfway line than the
I don't
3 point
know.
line.
3 seconds to go. It's
Yeah,
his shot.
yeah, yeah,
What's he going to do if he dribbles the ball?
yeah, yeah.
Time to put it up. You're a defender. You can see the shot clock.
Mm,
You had your hand down. Prentice Nixon is the leading exponent of hand down, man down in this league.
yeah,
You have
yeah,
not got
yeah.
your hand down. It is going up, and it's going up from the triple threat position down low. He's bringing it up. He's shooting it, right?
Mm,
And you have to have the fear of that if you're
mm,
guarding him. So I'm going to say, yeah, it's a fantastic shot. I'm going to say he should never have been given the opportunity to set it up. And is that what I was saying with the Newcastle game before about having distance between the defender and the ball handler? You
mm.
don't have to have distance when there's 3 seconds on the shot clock. You have to be pressed up to him.
Yeah, yeah.
And he just stood there and he let him rise up and he shoot it. So hell of a shot, but that's what those guys do. That's why they're so good. That's why they're pros,
Mm.
good pros.
50 seconds to go. Tough one from Lawrence late in the shot clock. Puts Surrey back ahead, 95-96. And then Chapman's lay-in rolls out. So does the tip from Kern. And then Nixon at the third attempt is fouled with 25.8 seconds to go. He goes to the line, makes both free throws,
Yeah, I'm
97-96.
not actually that sure he was fouled, to be honest.
Mm,
But I thought there's a lot of hand on that ball. But he gave up two offensive rebounds in that situation. This is the point whereby everybody's playing small.
mm,
So there are no centers on the court. So it's basically which of the guards is going to go get a rebound. Because Sheffield are playing Kern, Dirk Williams, um, Nixon, Chapman, and maybe Ratinho. I can't remember.
mm,
Somebody else, one of the other guys, but not one of the big guys. And Surrey are exactly the same with I think Cholovinskis and Smalls playing the five spot. I don't think Teo was in the game either.
mm,
Could be wrong. So there's no one there to get a rebound. So it's
mm,
basically no one's boxing out. It's just jump and go get it. And
mm.
Nixon got in there. Nixon got it. He got the call as a result. So be it.
Uh, Lawrence misses from the elbow. Sheffield will get the rebound. Dirk's out in front. He's fouled from the side by Polite, so it's given us unsportsmanlike, and that's the game with 2.7 seconds to go.
Well, you thought it was, wouldn't you? Except they tried to throw the ball away, didn't they?
Well, they did try and turn the ball over on
Yeah.
the inbound, to
And
be
Small had
fair.
picked it up. He actually had a
Yeah,
3 point shot, I think, to shoot
yeah,
it on the buzzer, but he didn't
yeah,
manage to pick it up.
yeah.
Um, Yeah, I mean Lawrence's shot wasn't a good shot, but the bottom line is Surrey played pretty decent basketball. Sheffield
Mm,
played pretty decent basketball. You got to knock down your foul shots.
yeah, yeah,
That's it. That's the game. Nothing more, nothing less. Surrey won the game. If you miss, all you can ask for as a coach is to get into a situation where the opposition are fouling you.
yeah,
You should win.
yeah, yeah,
But if you don't knock down the foul shots, and it's your good foul shooters that are missing them,
yeah,
and ultimately it's just one that got away.
yeah. Kern, 29 points, 9 rebounds. Al Hadjic, 21 points, 10 rebounds. Williams, 19 points, 5 assists. Polite, 22. Lawrence, 22. Lilly, 5 of 11 for 3 for 17. I think you gave the numbers, but they bear repeating. 13 of 25 from the free throw line in a game you lost by 3 in overtime.
Yeah, no, they weren't all shot by big guys who can't shoot.
No, no,
That's a
no.
problem. The ones that you want. Interesting to watch Sheffield kind of re-centralize themselves around Ali Hodzic,
Mm,
because it's a totally different player to anything they had with Deloach or Lee or anything like that.
mm,
And he's enjoying the space that the offense gives him, and he's finishing with both hands. And he looks a little. I mean, I might be wrong, but I think he looks a little bit either. I wouldn't hesitate to say slimmer, but more mobile. I don't
mm.
know if he's healthier than he was maybe in his last year at Caledonia, because he's quite active around the rim and giving them some excellent production.
Let's go to the final game. Cheshire Phoenix 116. Bristol Flyers 73. Still no Joe Anderson. Nick scored the first 10 points of the game. That was basically as close as it got. Flyers turned the ball over time and time again. It was 14 to 2, the turnovers at halftime, and 20 to nothing points off turnovers at halftime.
Sorry, Zach, I zoned out when you said still no Joe Anderson. What was that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's like ultimately that's the game because as you say, there's things you can do to win basketball games. There's things you can do to lose basketball games.
mm,
There's things you can do, and everything in Cheshire applies in extremis.
mm,
So if you're going to turn the ball over anywhere, you turn the ball over against London, and London kind of, they're going to take a fast break if they've got it, but otherwise they're going to grind you down.
mm,
You do it against Cheshire, they're not grinding you down, they're blowing you up.
mm,
So it's they're running and they're dunking and they're shooting threes in their home gym and flying around and all of that stuff. Um, and they just couldn't look after the ball.
mm,
That's the bottom line. And as I say, it's because they've had a guy looking after the ball all season for them,
mm, mm,
who's been very, very high usage. And I say Brown is a lot of things. He's still, I think, technically a combo.
mm.
He's not a what you'd describe as a floor setter. Hence, we talked about the shots he had in the last game. Then maybe you'd expect a little bit more out of Holden to handle. But then again, Holden's not been playing like that all season, so it's very difficult to ask Holden to do that now. All season he's been playing off the ball, he's been posting up, he's been attacking as a secondary option. So I just thought they looked a little bit defeated, Cheshire, Bristol. And once it starts raining in Ellesmere Port, it
Mm.
generally continues to pour.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And that's what happened.
yeah. Skylar White obviously got the 3.3 needed to go past Piero Cameron to be the all-time
What
three-point.
was the all-time attempts? How many attempts did Skylar had compared to Piero? I'm interested.
It was very close.
Yeah.
At the Leicester game, before the game, where I think he needed 3 to go past him, he'd taken like 2 more than
So
Piero. So
basically, almost
so
identical
pretty
percentage.
close,
Yeah.
pretty close. Yeah, yeah. Obviously, Skylar's done it in 50 less games,
Yeah. Well,
but
that's yeah.
the percentage was
Well,
pretty
they shoot a
close
lot
to it.
more shots than they used to. Shoot a lot more
Yeah,
threes than they used to, and
yeah.
Skylar hasn't always had. Sky, I think even Skylar would probably accept he wasn't the passer that Piero was.
No,
Piero,
no, I think that's fair to say.
Was a great passer as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and had great players to pass to be
yeah.
fair.
He
We
did
talked
have
about
some really good
you
teams.
talked about Calvin Davis and
Yeah,
James
yeah,
Hamilton and
yeah, yeah. McCord would
John
have been on our
McCord, who was
team as well. Yeah,
underestimated as one of the best players
yeah,
we ever had in this
yeah,
country.
yeah,
As well as kind of the rotating cast of guards that those guys had.
mm,
Um, so yeah, but oh, so that's it's like anything, it's an achievement.
yeah. He's closing in on Yorick now. He's just another 700 3-pointers behind him. The The record, speaking of 3 point records, they tied the record for most 3 pointers attempted in the live stats era,
Yeah,
48,
I know.
which makes me
I
sort
heard
of
your countdown up
really
at the end of the
excited.
game. It
Uh,
gave you something to talk about.
yeah, they were one behind the mates. Obviously, they got 23 earlier in the season, which was level with London from a few years ago. They only got 22 here in this one. 22 of 48, not bad, not
Yeah, well,
bad.
Bristol, I mean, Bristol got to the point in the probably the middle of the third, the fourth quarter, whereby again they were playing for their numbers, and
Yeah,
if Cheshire were going to shoot threes, they weren't going to run them off.
yeah,
Um, we've talked about. I mean, there's a bigger picture with Cheshire, which is really, as I said, that I love teams that are extreme on something because it really, in the way that they commit to a certain style of play, because it really forces other teams to kind of change or adapt, right? And it's an advantage generally because, if you end up playing against one kind of style of basketball for 8 weeks in a row, and then the ninth week you come up against Cheshire, you
mm,
ain't ready for it.
yeah, yeah,
And I always remember it's again, I've got apologies going back in the memory lane, um, but before videotape was prevalent, even before I was on the bench with the Eagles, when Fab started, they started this thing about fronting the post.
mm,
And literally, TJ Walker would be guarding the biggest guy, but he'd be in front of him and they'd be
mm,
pressurizing the hell out of the ball. And Bridget talks about it more. And teams just never saw that.
mm,
So they'd be denying everything. And that gave you so much of an advantage on game basis because it would take a team 10 to 15 minutes to figure it out what was going on.
yeah, yeah,
Now
yeah,
everything's harder now because everything's videotaped now.
yeah, yeah.
Right. So there's no secret about the way that Cheshire play.
And it's on synergy sometimes with I mean I watched the second half of a Cheshire Sheffield on synergy because it had got up, not Cheshire, whoever Sheffield Surrey,
Sorry,
because
yeah.
it was up
Yeah.
from that in that
Just so
period of
people
time.
understand what Synergy is a website which basically has nearly all the world's proper basketball on,
Mm,
where you can basically click on any number at any situation to get
yeah,
any clip you want at any point. So every
yeah.
single clip on the basketball game is analyzed by
So
somebody
going back to you could have TJ Walker's post defense, and you click
else.
on a number, and it will show you every videotape of TJ Walker fronting the post.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
literally there, right in front of you.
yeah,
So, it was really useful too because when you're scouting, when you're scouting the opposition, you know where they like to shoot their shots
mm,
from. You get into a pattern of it, and you can verify that eye test with the data.
yeah,
So that's all there now. Now, what Cheshire are doing is saying, we don't care that we're still
mm,
going to take you on this way,
mm,
and they're doing it with a commitment to what they do, but also kind of a Moneyball approach, which
mm,
Moneyball was a book written by Michael Lewis in mid 2000s about Boston, about the Oakland A's baseball team, and when basically numbers started coming into professional sports in America. And they're doing it. We've talked before about, threes and rim shots and high
mm,
number of possessions and higher value of expected shots because they're shooting more shots in a game. The twist, and this is where the fascination comes in. The twist with Moneyball was that, Billy Bean, who was the general manager of the Oakland A's, played by Brad Pitt. He was a little bit like me when I was at the Eagles.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I was definitely the Brad Pitt, not the Jonah Hill.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, right. But Billy Bean kind of looked into this, and yeah, they've got a really low payroll team, but they figured out the way that you had to win, get men on base, etc.,
Mm,
and signed a bunch of cheap misfits, and suddenly they won 100 games, or they won
mm,
110 games, in one of the most historic seasons in MLB history.
mm.
But when it got to the playoffs,
They didn't win the World Series.
they win the World Series,
Mm,
and in fact, what happened was on a kind of a macro basis, when you're
mm,
playing numbers across the whole season, yeah,
mm,
you're going to win games like they did on Sunday.
mm,
Yeah. And you're gonna win more games than you lose because you're really good at it.
mm,
The test for them is, when it comes down to the one-off game
mm,
or the two-off game, and they've had two semi-finals this year, which they haven't got through.
mm,
They're going to have another one in the playoffs, you assume, because I'm guessing they're going to get to you're going to be in there. You know, do those advantages that they have on a week-to-week basis, those numbers, do they flatten out because it's a smaller sample size and
yeah,
we're more ready for them? And
yeah.
it's a genuinely interesting parallel.
Mm.
because they are so far out there in relation to their shot chart, the speed of play, everything that they do. That if they don't win or if they struggle again in the playoffs and the games aren't there, do they double down on it next year and go exactly the same and
Yeah,
do it
yeah,
more?
yeah, yeah.
Or do they try and refine it and pull it back a little bit so that in certain games there's a little bit more structure?
Mm.
There's a little bit. I'm not saying there's not structure. There is structure in what they do. It'd be wrong to say it's not structured, but there is a kind of a second way.
Mm.
And I don't know the answer to that.
No.
My instinct is to say you just go eyeballs out at what you do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah,
the minute that you start doubting yourself and you start putting too much complication in the minds of players, you're likely to nullify yourself as opposed to anything.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but it's really interesting. And by the way, we talk about Ossaboyan in the London game before the final.
But yeah, 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 yeah,
Skylar dunking that ball at the end when you're on 116. That
yeah,
got
yeah,
Johannesson off the bench.
yeah, yeah,
And Johansson got his technical for coming off the bench and saying
yeah,
that. Just so people understand, you can play till the end. That's
yeah, yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
fine. If
yeah,
there's a
yeah,
shot clock and the shot's running out, you're meant to do that. But to kind of dunk uncontested on the fast break with a minute to go, with a second to go when you're at 40,
yeah,
pound your chest, and I'm not a great fan of, as you well know, I'm not a great fan of convention and all that nonsense because the game, the ball's live and you can do what you want.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
at the end of the day, Johansson isn't the most emotional of guys.
No.
He was sitting there watching his team get hammered, and he was off that bench
Yeah, yeah,
having a
yeah,
point saying, "Yeah,
yeah.
what are you doing that for?" Now, Cheshire don't care. You don't have to.
No,
It's not their
no,
problem.
no, no.
Well, all I'm interested in is what happens if those two play in the playoffs. We would need to watch out for how
Yeah,
Johansson plays because Johansson won't forget that,
no.
and then they won't forget that. So, there's times whereby yeah, I don't know, it's emotion, it's sport, and
Yeah, yeah.
and fans want to see dunks and
They,
stuff.
they do, and I remember there was a game. I think it was Leicester against Brighton, and Anthony McHenry
Yeah.
dunked at the end of the game to
Mm.
get Leicester onto 100.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right, and all the fans are up. I was doing the PA.
He
All
could
the
jump,
fans are
he
up
could
because they
jump.
won 100.
Yeah,
Last play, there was a fight
yeah.
because was Nurse coaching? Was Nurse at Brighton at that point, or had he
No, I think
already
that would
left?
have been 506. McHenry was the year that the Eagles won the clean sweep,
Oh
506.
yeah, so
I
so
think
it
that I
wasn't
think that
him.
was the
Maybe
year
maybe it
after
wasn't
the
even Brighton. Maybe it was somebody else.
yeah.
But I just remember them. Whoever the coach was going mad. The players were going mad. Carl Brown was the coach, and he was like, "Look, it was 100 points. The fans wanted
Oh,
it. Blah
yeah.
blah blah." And I totally get it because the people who paid their ticket, they want to see that. They want to see Skylar give it the big dunk at the end. They want to see Anthony McHenry put 100 points
On the board.
on the board. That's what they pay their money for. But the other team gets super annoyed. It was like the old timeouts you used to get. Paul James used to call timeouts late in games, and the other team would be like, "You're disrespecting us because you're
Yeah.
winning." Well, don't get down 25. If you're going to get mad at them calling the timeout, don't get down 25. But it doesn't matter what you and I think. It doesn't matter what the fans think. It's what goes on in their head for the next game. What slights and disrespect do the players
Oh, yeah,
take?
that's right. Yeah. So it's all a trade-off. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I got a story on that one as well. As my very first year on the bench. Actually, I joined halfway through the season, 2009, 2010.
Mm,
And it was played the last season at the Telly West Arena.
mm,
And we played a playoff quarter final against Worthing.
mm.
And it was one of those games where Worthing were really first v eighth, and Worthing were kind of not really best chuffed at having to pay 2 grand to get knocked out.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
was a one-off playoff game because it wasn't two legs. And they had a guy coaching who was a legend of coaching in this country, Dave Titmus,
yeah.
who was coaching them that year. And for whatever reason, we were up about 30. It was Kadiri was playing for Worthing. We signed him
Mm,
the next year. It was that team with McAlvaine and Kadiri and Reggie
mm.
Brown.
Yeah, yeah.
They were done. They were finished by the end of the year. They would want to go home, I think. And I called a timeout, and I can't remember why I called it. I think it might have been for subs because we wanted to get some guys out of the game. But it was about 4 minutes to go. It wasn't right at the end. It was about 3 or 4 minutes to go. And Dave Titmus was really, really not
Mm,
happy.
mm.
He might have even emailed us afterwards. I can't remember now. But
Yeah, yeah,
said, and I'm like, I didn't know I was doing anything wrong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah,
I bet the quarter time. I'm like, no, no, look. And Fab's like, I don't get fucked. It's our team.
yeah,
We need to do
yeah,
all that stuff. But there is a certain code to it.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and looking back, yeah, you're probably the right thing to do is just to play the game out and get your subs on when the ball goes out of play or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
Because the thing of it's a one-off game. They just want to get out of the gym. You have
yeah,
to.
yeah, yeah,
You're up by 30. They know they're not winning, and then you're
yeah,
playing out to stop the game. I understand how that would wind people up.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
the dunks. Didn't think of
yeah,
it at the time, but as you get back into as you get into the understanding of the flow of the sport
yeah,
and what professionals think and how professionals act.
yeah,
But Cheshire are upending that. They've upended it all season. They don't care. That's kind of fine.
yeah, yeah,
They are.
yeah, yeah,
That's who they are, and they're going to be unapologetically like that.
yeah, yeah,
If you're going to be unapologetic, that's fine.
yeah,
You just have to be able to deal with it when the backlash comes, and they
yeah,
may well be able to. And
yeah.
Rideau played really well in this game, and
He did.
he has this kind of twinkle, and this little kind of
Yeah,
twinkle of devilry in his eye,
yeah, yeah,
which is really quite entertaining to watch as
yeah.
well.
23 points, 10 assists, 8 rebounds he had, nearly a triple double.
Mm.
Robinson, 19 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. So what is that? 40 odd points, 15, 16 assists, and double figure rebounds from
Yeah.
your
If
point
teams are
guards.
not going, if
Pretty
players
good.
are knocking down threes, you're going to get
Yeah, yeah,
assists because they're
yeah,
the only two that really create them.
yeah, yeah,
On that team, there's very few create. Everybody else is a finisher. Those two are the creators, but they're
yeah.
both good at it.
Policelli, 17.6 rebounds. Joachim, 17.6 rebounds, 7 and 9 shooting. Kristen, 13 points. McCormack, 11 points and 8 rebounds.
Mm.
Right, let's have a look at the table before we go. London, 20 and 5, can win the league title next weekend if they win twice and Manchester
Albeit, given
lose.
what McGusty said in his interview at the end of the cup final, he doesn't appear to think the league title exists.
No, no, that's not
We're,
unsurprising.
we're trying to win all three. No, no,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Right, okay.
Cheshire, second place, 17 and 11. Manchester, third place. They've qualified for the playoffs as well, 16 and 10. They need to lose next weekend for London to be able to win the title. They're away at Surrey. Sheffield, 13 and 12. My little spreadsheet hasn't given them a cue. They might be qualified. They're certainly on the brink of it. Bristol 12 and 14, Surrey 11 and 15, Leicester 10 and 13, Newcastle 10 and 16, and Caledonia 6 and 19.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I think you'd probably say with Leicester's issues and obviously Bristol with Anderson, and Bristol have struggled a little bit since probably last month. You would probably say that 5 to 8 is open.
Mm,
There's only a couple of losses between those teams. Newcastle at 10 and 16 and kind of Bristol at 12 and 14. And while Leicester
mm.
have got games in hand to play, you've got to have players to play them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So they're not, there's nobody who's a gimme win, and they're probably the Caledonia game at home is probably the one that you'd be most comfortable thinking that you're going to walk into the gym and win, and that's
yeah.
the battle and they lost it.
Mm,
At the top, I mean, I have to say, having seen Manchester in the flesh and having seen Cheshire in the flesh like 3 times this season, Manchester are a lot harder to play against than Cheshire if you're planned for Cheshire
mm,
because of the depth of talent and the different ways that they play, and just that their guards are different and smoother. Cheshire play with a force. Manchester play with kind of a little bit. They have different ways of playing. They have the big guy in the middle, and they have the Osborne in the middle differently. Um, so I would probably, and this is probably annoy people, I'd probably say Manchester are where their budget places and where it should be, which is probably the second best team in the league on a one game basis. Um, but Cheshire have certainly overachieved with their budget and what they have. And then you have Sheffield who are kind of just toddling along every time you look. They seem to be one game either side of 500.
mm, mm,
Um, and I'm sorry, Caledonia, but I don't give you much hope
mm,
of getting past any of the teams above you because you've only got about 6 games to play and you need to win 4 or 5 of them.
mm. Yeah.
So yeah, so I think the 8 are probably set. But I do think 5 to 8 is in play now, which it probably wasn't 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Mm.
Um, and
Right, we'll call it a day for this week. We'll be back next week. I think we can do Sunday next week because I'm in Leicester on Sunday afternoon. So I think we can, probably, assuming you're not like doing some sort of
Sunday I'll be in church. I'll be
Easter
doing
bunny thing.
psalms, won't I?
Whether you will have done that, Dave, I would have thought
Oh,
by
no, I mean midnight mass.
church in the morning, mate. Midnight mass is Christmas. You don't
Is
do
that right? I
midnight
don't
mass
do
at
church.
Easter.
As you probably gathered from
Yeah,
the repeated
yeah,
ramblings on here, I'm
yeah,
not a religious individual.
yeah.
I don't wish to offend anybody who is,
Mm,
obviously. Got
mm,
enough going on at the moment. But yeah, Easter Sunday sounds
mm.
wonderful. Why stop for a public holiday? Yeah? Let's just
Indeed. Keep
plow
going.
on
Keep
through.
going. Keep going. I do remember a coach who I won't name for sake. I do remember a coach one year moaning about the fact that his team were being forced to play on Boxing Day. It was Leicester were the first team ever to play on Boxing Day, and his team were forced to play on Boxing Day, and he was moaning that they had to train on Christmas Day, and it was the holiest day of the year. And then the following season, his team played on Easter Sunday. And when I went to Catholic school,
Oh yeah.
Easter was more holy than
That's the hardest thing
Christmas.
about that. I mean, he should be counting himself thankful that he got a gym on Christmas Day in this country.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
good look. It
yeah,
was the playing over Christmas was never a problem for us. It was pretty
yeah,
easy. I was finding somewhere that would open the doors.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
can't play without practicing the day before, you know.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, but no, Easter Sunday we'll manage. I mean,
Police headquarters Enderby, as I recall,
is that
Christmas
right?
Day.
Okay, the
Yeah,
police let
yeah,
you in, did they?
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
assuming you didn't burgle it.
yeah. No,
Um,
no.
no, yeah. So not bad. Yeah, not bad. But what we're getting towards the end of it now. He's just kind of waiting for it to finish now, so we can get the
Mm.
playoffs on. Hopefully, have a couple of
The
times.
league title is up for. We've got a
Yeah,
three-way
yeah,
battle for it. I think Sheffield are still technically in the title
yeah,
race, Dave.
yeah. Right. Okay.
I think mathematically they. I can't remember. I think they've only played London twice, so I think they
Right.
could still manoeuvre their way in four-way title race.
Right.
We might not be saying this next Sunday, but we'll see.
No, but
So we'll call it a day there, Dave. I think.
yes, I think so. Please,
Yeah, yeah,
please
yeah,
put everybody out of their misery.
yeah, yeah. We'll be back next week. See you then. Bye.